Here at RUSI, we speak to around 8,500 students who are in professional military education every year. 18 staff colleges around the world in everything from a single lecture to a 2-week-long work package. And on themes as diverse as Great Pack Competition, the future of alliances, or hybrid warfare, active measures, the deep battle, or the reality of contemporary conflict. We have a special relationship with Ecole de Guerre. In Paris, the students don't have a deeply intensive laid out syllabus which they've got to crack through during that year. They do that work before they get to the college. And as a result, the year they spend in Paris, they look at topics which are designed to exercise their intellect, to extend their idea of concepts of doctrine, to change how they think about great problems. We've been privileged to, over the past 3 years, to set them a series of challenges every year, and in conjunction with the English department there, the students spend their year looking at a selection of topics that we give them and deciding to write a dissertation, thesis on one of those topics. The topics we select aren't necessarily those that are around the big issues of the day. They're not even necessarily over the big issues over the next 2 to 3 years. But they are issues and challenges that we think need looking at. They're issues that might extend to 20 or 30 years out. They're conceptual and they're designed to stretch them intellectually, to bring something else to bear as they go into the next parts of their careers. Now, normally, at the culmination of their presentations, at the end of their academic year, the students present their findings and their paper to a panel who then challenge them, question them, and generally dig into some of the detail that sits behind it to really push them and challenge some of the debating skills. And again, they do this in English. What's even better is that we found that we have the support of both Vice Chiefs of Defence Staff from the UK and France who make their way to London to RUSI and join these sessions, each of which has been fascinating, challenging and insightful. This year, of course, that wasn't possible. It wasn't possible for the students to come to London to present or to bring people into a big room to do the challenge sessions. So we did it virtually. And we weren't able to bring a whole variety of others to come and view what they saw. So instead, we did it virtually. And the attached presentations that you can see in the following clips are the findings of the students and their papers. The students are really to be congratulated for what they have delivered. It's quite astounding not only that they've achieved this in a year, but in a second language and delivered a paper as well as a compelling and good presentation at the end of it. The whole range of topics that we gave them for the last year were everything from the reliance on logistics, proxies in space, the morphing of cyber and space challenges, contested theatre entry. But perhaps the two most interesting presentations that you'll see were on, firstly, the concept of parity in military terms, and secondly, the changing rules of warfare and what they mean for the future. The students of both of these presentations really excelled themselves, and we're really grateful to the support from Rob Johnson at CCW and numerous others who helped them through what is a difficult intellectual period for them. We really enjoyed working with them and hope you enjoy the presentations that follow. Thanks very much for watching. Next, we turn to the question of weaponisation of space. The Outer Space Treaty was aimed at preventing space from being used for conflict. Increasingly, however, C4I-style systems have become reliant on space-based platforms and technologies. Now, the very way Western militaries plan on fighting, dispersed and distributed, will be dependent on space-based systems. To some, this is only one part of the issue. Research and development, alongside threat perceptions and technologies being advanced by adversaries, notably with the advent of hypersonic weapons, may make the deployment of weapons systems themselves in space a foregone conclusion. What are the implications for a new arms race of weapons in space, and who is likely to prevail? Once again, we left this very much for the students to decide how they would tackle it and what topics around the weaponisation of space they would take. One team of students from Ecole de Guerre took up the challenge. Their presentation follows, and I hope you enjoy it.
So, sir, ladies, gentlemen, we were tasked by RUSI this year to work on the weaponization of space. After the Cold War era, Western countries obtained a dominant position in space. But you all know the situation above our heads now. 2,000 satellites are orbiting amongst 20,000 detected and controlled objects. Recent projections show it will grow by a tenfold in the next decade. More and more spacefaring nations are able to contest this domination. That's why we need to build a new strategy. With our paper, we decided to focus on the very low Earth orbits. It's a very specific fringe of altitude between 100 kilometers, usually described as the beginning of space, and 500 kilometers. At those altitudes, halfway between sky and space, traditional orbital laws already apply, but residual atmospherical effects, such as a drag, exist. We'll explain in this presentation why VLEO matter and will grow in importance. Thanks to, first, a greater accessibility, because VLEO is affordable for new spacefaring nations. Thanks to saturation in traditional orbits, because the situation I've just described is mostly due to congestion in orbits above very low Earth orbits, between 800 kilometers and 1,500 kilometers roughly. And finally, thanks to the maturity in the technologies, and that we will speak in the second part. So we are from the military. We will talk about strategic interest. We think VLEO could become the next battlefield for space powers, because there you can exploit a continuum between air and space. Indeed, the first nation that will have an operational spacecraft able to transition between atmosphere and multiple orbits, repeating that for several missions, will definitely get a competitive advantage. The example of the X-37B demonstrates it's feasible, and we are now waiting for operational application. The multiplication of new threats then, such as hypersonic missiles, will make VLEO our first line of defense. Such missiles are operating between 50 kilometers and 150 kilometers. And the most probable option to detect, track, and destroy those systems will be space-based and in the lowest layers of orbits. Looking now with our enemy's eyes, and that's very important, this very low Earth orbits appears to be the perfect gray zone for their operation. There they could plan covert operation. That's why we must control this area after the VLEO rush that we predict.
Okay, the first advantage of VLEO lies in the opportunity to continuously upgrade and inject new technologies due to relative short lifetime and cost efficiency of the objects launched in the very close Earth orbits. We consider that the current attractiveness by private companies for mega constellations in low Earth orbits is significant and should inspire our defense space architecture. From a military perspective, the redundancy of such systems linked through satellites, laser communications, and via air briefing satellites is a differentiating factor. The more satellites and ground stations you will constitute mega constellations, the more difficult it will be for an aggressor to deny the service by any type of aggression. A large investment in VLEO and the sole integration of new technologies will not guarantee the preservation of space dominance. It requires to build a new space architecture with VLEO as the first line of defense. The current space defense architectures are largely designed around geostationary satellites with high performance and long lifetimes. Those satellite systems in geo orbits are heavy, complex, expensive to develop and operate. It's time to break the vicious cycle of space acquisition. We don't call for abandoning heavy satellites and geo orbits for a 100% VLEO architecture. We defend a multi-layer space architecture with a combination of heavy satellites in geo and constellations of micro and nano satellites in VLEO, each layer driven by mission purposes. As such, VLEO capacities should be integrated not only in the permanent architecture, but also and above all, as a resilient asset which could be launched as a fast response. We also advocate for the emergence of a suitable institutional organization capable of deciding, funding, and unifying space military architecture by the integration of VLEO assets through larger use of the commercial sector. This entity shall perform rapid acquisition, calls for contribution in order to integrate as quickly as possible technological breakthroughs.
Besides the implementation of a global space architecture, preservation of space superiority also relies on VLEO-oriented capabilities. First of all, it's absolutely crucial to develop and build a robust and integrated space surveillance capacity. This capacity covers two major aspects: a resilient network of different sensors, like radars, telescopes, to detect, track space objects, and a dedicated space command and control capability to handle the huge amount of collected data. Such a capacity not only makes it possible to monitor space and know what is happening here, but also makes it possible to contribute directly to the protection and security of VLEO spacecraft by controlling risks of collision in space and by evaluating potential hostile acts and opponents' satellite maneuvers. Next, to protect VLEO infrastructures and to maintain superiority in a more and more contested space environment, passive defense is not sufficient. Consequently, active defense has to be seriously considered to a certain extent in order to avoid escalation. Thus, temporary and reversible actions have to be preferred to permanent destructions. In this context, jamming and cyber attacks are clear options to be considered. Then, opportunities of civil-military duality have to be seized, especially within the range of large and private projects for constellations of satellites, which appeared a few years ago and should develop quickly in VLEO. The objective is to facilitate placing military payloads aboard commercial satellites at every opportunity, and thus acting as an effect multiplier. Now, things to remember: VLEO is a real game changer for space superiority in the future. It gathers good performance, cost efficiency, and resilience. Moreover, in case of denied space success, VLEO would be the last usable orbits or the first to be reused. Finally, for all these reasons, whatever the nature of future conflicts, our assumption is that VLEO will be key, even decisive. Thank you for your attention.